is that my discovery that what we have in our brain, or what makes humans unique, is their mental immune system. That's the ability to think, to plan, and to yeah, understand challenges, having ideas, and being able to in a social community to explore those ideas and transform ideas into reality. And also, of course, because that's why I call it immune system, the mental immune system is our ability to recognize threats from outside, threats not from microorganisms. For that, we have our physical immune system, but threats from yeah, from other humans, from ideas that might be threatening to our lifestyle, and so forth. So the threat from narratives. And we know that narratives are dominating our world. All cultural beliefs dominate our daily work and our daily lives. So the question is, how do we judge these narratives? What is our ability? And for that, we have what I call the mental immune system. And it's a very um, uh, specific region in our brain that is responsible for this ability. And this is our autobiographical memory center. And now back to your question, is there an attack against the autobiographical memory center, reducing our ability to think and to have a functioning mental immune system? My answer would be yes. Is the attack intended or just happening by accident? That's quite difficult to answer. Actually, I have this let this an open question in my book. I just provide the evidence for the reader, and my strong belief is that the reader at the end comes to the same conclusion that I come. It's intended. It's intentional.
Yeah.
So, what is the attack? Well, first of all, you have to understand what our autobiographical memory center needs to be functioning. First of all, it needs everything that what I call is a lifestyle in accordance with our natural needs. Meaning that if we are, as humans, we need social contact to others. We need, of course, proper food. Any lack of something that is essential for our life is, of course, diminishing the function of the autobiographical memory center. And but also we know that, for example, physical activity encourages the autobiographical memory center to be highly active, and many other things like regular sleep or being in a state where we don't fear too much. I mean, we know that anxiety, strong anxiety, stress, everything harms the autobiographical memory center. And why is it so susceptible to such dangers? Well, first of all, the autobiographical memory center has a very unique function. When I talk about the autobiographical memory center, what I mean is essentially the neuronal correlate of a diary, of our daily diary. It's like a booklet where we write down every day what we experience. And when we are born, of course, our brain doesn't know how old we are going to get. We could be only 50 years old, we could be 100 years old. Even 122 is feasible. So in order to have every day a new page ready for new experiences, the autobiographical memory center, which based on its shape in its anatomical shape, we call hippocampus because it looks really like a seahorse. We have two of them, both each one in the temporal lobe of our brain. And these two seahorses have the ability to grow new cells. And they have this ability to grow new cells our whole life. And metaphorically speaking, these new cells represent the new pages in a diary that is formed every day. So every day we create a new page where we can, yeah, experience new things, and without losing former informations, former experiences. We can always add new information, experiences into our wisdom, into our wealth of experiences, and become more and more experienced the older we get. And if we reflect on these experiences, we call that wisdom, the wisdom of age. So the Autobiographical Memory Center represents essentially our ability to become wise humans. Yeah, actually Homo sapiens. I mean, the wise human is represented by the ability of the hippocampus to grow new cells the whole life. Now, everything that grows is more susceptible to damage than things which are already existing. So if you are a gardener, and you have a tree in your garden, this tree is stable. But if this tree creates new seeds and the seeds start to grow, then of course they are much more susceptible to any kind of damage. And that's pretty much how you have to view the new cells that are born every day in the hippocampus. They are very susceptible to damage. So everything that harms the production of these new nerve cells harms the mental immune system. Because the mental immune system does not only consist of the autobiographical memory capacity of the hippocampus, these new cells have additionally a couple of functions that go together with the autobiographical memory. These functions are, for example, that they are the neuronal correlate of curiosity. So if these cells grow and if they are managing to get into the network of the hippocampus, the neuronal network of the hippocampus, these cells represent what we call curiosity, our sense of learning new things, our interest to make new experiences. And of course, new experiences, usually, if you go in a direction where you have never been before, there might be a danger. So we have to overcome a certain fear if you want to experience something new. It might be something new outside the normal paths that you go every day. If you go into an area of a city where you have never been, you don't know if there's danger maybe around the corner. But the same as if you try to make experiences about yourself. If you want to explore your own personality, you usually have a fear you might discover something you don't like. So every type of experience, new experience you want to do, you have to overcome this fear. And that's why these new cells also, interestingly, represent the neuronal correlate of psychological resilience. So these new cells offer you psychological resilience, curiosity, autobiographical memory, capacity. And in addition, what I found out is that they are the mental energy that we need to actually think. They might even be the correlate of conscious experiences. So, based on the theory of mind, that means which believes that our brain essentially does unconsciously steer us through the world unless something new happens and we start actually becoming aware of it. And conscious awareness is a part of the ability of these cells to recognize these new things and explore it and think about it, and of course change maybe behavior if necessary. So all these functionalities, mental energy to think, curiosity, psychological resilience, and of course memory and experience, I summarize as the concept of mental immune system. But this mental immune system, which makes us more human than maybe any other system in the brain, is at the same time the most vulnerable system in our brain because it consists of newborn cells. And now, how can you attack these new cells if you really want to overcome a society? I mean, that's the best way to overcome a society is you make sure that these new cells are not born, or if they are born, they're destroyed. Because then you diminish essentially the human's ability to counteract any kind of threat against humanity. You accept essentially every narrative as it is because you fear to explore it, you are not curious to explore it, and you don't have the mental energy to explore it. You should just accept it. So if you want to have a society that accepts everything that you want, you have to destroy the society's mental immune system, which in a, in a way, in the sum of all people, represents the social immune system, as I call it. The mental immune system of each individual in combination with other individuals represents the social immune system, and the less efficient the mental immune system of each individual is, the less efficient is the social immune system against a threat against society. So the question is now, how can you attack it? Well, I already explained a few ideas what the mental immune system, the hippocampus, needs to grow. That is physical activity, social activity, proper nutrition, sleep, actually even a purpose in life. So all these things you need. And if you look back, for example, at the year 2020, most of these things were removed. Suddenly were not allowed to do sport outside. Social distancing was essentially unsocial distancing with a lot of harm against the hippocampus. Many people didn't eat correctly anymore because they were just fearful and drank more alcohol, which is a toxin to the hippocampus. And of course, many people lost their purpose in life because their businesses were shut down. So many things happened in 2020 already. And of course, then there was the fear mongering, the fear that we all kill ourselves because we are all dangerous people, because we all might harbor this dangerous virus. And particular children, if you come home from kindergarten or wherever, you might actually kill your grandparents. And this permanent fear, of course, led to an increase in stress hormones. And we know that stress hormones essentially shut down the production of new nerve cells in the hippocampus. And in addition to that, stressful fear, causes neurons to leak certain molecules which are usually not outside the nerve cells. We call them danger-associated molecular patterns. These are molecules which usually are in the brain when you damage your brain somehow. For example, if you play American football and you crash your head against some other person's head, then you get damage to the brain cells, and these danger-associated molecular patterns, abbreviated DAMPs, are leaked. And when they are leaked, they alert the immune system that there might be something damaged and that an immune response has to follow. And this immune response usually is accompanied by the production of what we call pro-inflammatory cytokines. And these pro-inflammatory cytokines have the ability to shut down completely the production of new nerve cells in your brain. Now we know that not only physical damage to your brain, but also psychological damage to your brain by fear mongering, by a lot of anxiety, by stress, distress, cause the same events. They cause the production of, or the leakage of DAMPs into the brain extracellular fluids, and they activate the immune system in the brain and shut down the what we call adult hippocampal neurogenesis, the production of new nerve cells in the hippocampus. This is actually the main reason or the main driver of diseases like depression and in the long term, even Alzheimer's. So everybody who reads the book will understand how depression comes about, but also how we can prevent Alzheimer's. But what is more important even is that with this understanding, we know now the mechanisms that drive essentially the hippocampus from a functioning state in a non-functioning state. And so people were driven by fear in 2021 to accept the injection of genetic material. I call it it's mRNA, the mRNA of a virus, but a particular part of the virus which we call the spike protein. It encodes the spike protein. And what I studied already, I worked many years on Alzheimer's disease, and what I realized many, many years ago is that viral proteins, particularly spike proteins, can essentially activate the same mechanism that is activated by the DAMPs, by the danger-associated molecular patterns. In that case, we don't call them DAMPs, we call them PAMPs, a funny word. PAMPs is an acronym, an abbreviation for pathogen-associated molecular patterns. But they are recognized by the immune system by the same receptor, and they trigger the same cascade of events leading to the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines in the brain and a shutdown of the production of new nerve cells in the hippocampus. That's why, for example, ongoing chronic infectious diseases are a risk factor for Alzheimer's. They're also a risk factor for depression. But they are also a risk factor for the inability of the mental immune system to function. And so when they started this mRNA injection program, I looked very closely at what they are actually injecting. And what they're injecting is the genetic material that causes the production of spike protein in every cell. And in addition to that, it was known that this SARS-CoV-2 virus, SARS-CoV-2 was produced as a bioweapon. And the bioweapon, every weapon, shoots a bullet, and the bullet of this weapon is a subunit of the spike protein. Actually, the coronavirus was weaponized by inserting a cleavage site into the spike protein that cleaves off a certain part of it, which we call the S1 subunit. And that makes the virus really a weapon, because this S1 subunit from the virus itself can essentially leak the cells where the spike protein is produced. It's cleaved off there by the furin cleavage site. Furin is an enzyme that every cell in our body possesses. So it's cleaved off. The S1 subunit can float around in the body, and it was shown that it actually can enter the brain. Now, in the brain, after an infection, we have the spike protein S1 subunit, and this S1 subunit is recognized as a PAMP, activates the mental immune, the physical immune system in the brain, and this activation leads to an inactivation of the mental immune system in the brain. So it's a severe attack against the mental immune system. Now, back to your original question, now after a long speech, your original question was, did this happen on purpose? Well, the weaponizing of the virus was done on purpose, that's clear. Was the mRNA injection program done on purpose? Of course. They made a lot of money, they made a lot of propaganda, that is done. What makes me believe that the attack on the brain was also intentional is that they left the furin cleavage site intact in the mRNA. I mean, if they knew they have to, if the idea really was only to immunize people, then you would, first of all, maybe choose some part of the virus that is not so dangerous for humans. I mean, there are other sites, nucleocapsid protein. There are many different proteins in the virus one could have used. One could have used a completely different method of delivery. But they on purpose used the spike protein and on purpose left the furin cleavage site intact. That means what they're actually injecting is not only a genetic material, but they inject the genetic material that essentially is the basis of the weaponized SARS-CoV-2 virus. It was weaponized by inserting the furin cleavage site, and exactly that construct is the major part of the mRNA injection program. And we see immediately the consequences. For example, there was a publication out there a year ago or so from Korea, South Korea, Seoul. They checked 500,000 people that got either the injection with the mRNA or essentially said, I don't want to have this injection. And you could see immediately after a few weeks that the rate of Alzheimer's disease went up dramatically. So a clear indication that the mental immune system is damaged. And you see the results in weeks. I mean, you get an acceleration of the Alzheimer's process. So a clear indication that this is what's happening. And of course, everybody of us most likely has also the experience that when he talks to people about all these issues, people who got the injection, they usually respond in a way that is almost strange to us. I mean, to people who didn't got the injection. I mean, I see it many, many times in my family, in friends or former friends. After they got the injection, they believe in not only in the narrative that was told, but this narrative became part of their personality. So if you question anything about what was happening, it's almost like you step on their toes. You go into their face, like you intrude their privacy. You attack them personally, even though you only want to talk about the concepts, the science, or something else. And this is really what makes my book what forms the title, the indoctrination, because you have to be aware of the fact that the mental immune system allows you to resist such dangers, to recognize the danger and maybe avoid it. But if your immune system is down, then you accept things you wouldn't accept if it were up, you know. So, but once you accept such a narrative and you accept the damage to your hippocampus inadvertently, on purpose, of course, then you shut down the production of new pages uh, being produced in the hippocampus. So what happens if you don't have a new page, but you are drilled every evening by the media what you have to learn about the virus, about the injection program, about everything? Well, it will essentially stick in your brain, and it will stick in the hippocampus, but it will not stick on a new page. It will actually start to override previous pages. So you lose or you reduce your own personality, your prior personality, what every experiences from the past which make up your person, yourself, is reduced and is essentially replaced by the narrative. And the narrative really becomes part of your personality and has no there's no alternative. So if you or I, who have been hopefully aware of what was going on, we hear the same narratives, but of course, our pages are turning, so to speak. We produce new pages every day. So we realize this is the information. Okay, I've learned that, but this is the other information I have in my brain, and I can start comparing. And this comparing is part of the function of the mental immune system. But if it's not functioning, you're not comparing. This is only now a new part of your personality. And please don't attack it. Don't question it, because you don't want to question myself. Nobody wants to question himself or herself, and that's exactly what's happening. So the indoctrination process, back to your question, I believe it's on purpose because it's part of a great idea which the proponents of this idea are not hiding. I mean, they're telling us what they are going to do. They're telling us in 2030 what the world should look like, that we live in a time where everything will be changing, where you will not own anything anymore. Everything will be socialized in a way, like in China, even maybe more than that. We will be controlled constantly by artificial intelligence, that there's a social scoring system that tells everybody of us, everybody has to know that is the world, how it looks like. This is how you have to behave. And if you don't behave, this will have consequences for you and for your family. I mean, they explore it already in China, and I've found documents in the German government which clearly tell us that in 2030, this is exactly what our community, our world will look like.
Mm.
And every time when you want to transform a society, give a society a new what I call operating system, in that case, a social operating system. Well, if you think about it, if you want to change your operating system on a computer, you essentially have to erase every memory on the computer. You have to erase all former operating systems. Otherwise, the new rules will interfere with or the old rules will interfere with the new rules of the computer program. So what you need to do is you have to override the pre-existing memories, and that's exactly what's happening. So the overall global idea of changing humanity and the attack on the mental immune system essentially go hand in hand. And so there is not only the attack was not only happening, there was also, when you look at the crime story, there was also not an intent and a motive. And so there's a motive, there's an intent, there is the weapon, and and you see how it's used. So everything to make a crime scene, and the
And the
perpetrators,
very,
yeah, you will see it. I mean, everything is open. So what I really strongly believe, and this book is not only negative, it's actually quite positive, the book. This is my hope. So if, of course, if to understand what's going on, you have to go through the book, but you learn a lot about how the brain functions and how particularly the mental immune system and the hippocampus is always able to regain its strength, because the adult hippocampal neurogenesis, even if you block it for a while, it can restart again. You can always change essentially your lifestyle and restart, and rekindle essentially, and yeah, recreate essentially your mental immune system again. And this gives me a lot of hope. And what I've learned in the last years by essentially telling people what's going on and how we can respond, I learn more and more that not everybody who accepted what was going on at the time is still a strong believer. So, in a way, I would say let's 20% or so didn't accept the narrative at the time. But meanwhile, I believe this number has doubled. I think there are 30, 40% meanwhile who wouldn't accept that again, who realize just by looking around and seeing that people are suffering after the mRNA injection, that they have chronic diseases, that we have accelerated cancer, that we have premature death of people who are young, and we can't explain it otherwise. We see the statistics, and so meanwhile, I think more and more people by people like you and me and others who tell them what's going on. I mean, step by step, I think we gain access to their brains again. They respond and they learn, and so I have a strong hope that if that we actually are in a situation where we might be better off than we were before 2020. I
Mhm.
mean, maybe this crisis was necessary to wake people up. And to just give you a feeling for that, when I worked on Alzheimer's disease the last 10, 15 years, and there's actually one of my books, Alzheimer's Can Be Healed, is actually also translated into French. And but even though I show people how they can prevent Alzheimer's very efficiently, and now, 10 years after I wrote the book, more and more science is out there who proves that I'm correct. Um, but at the time when I published the book, people were not willing to read it. I mean, of course, it was a bestseller in Germany and in a couple of other countries, but bestseller doesn't mean that all the people who should read it actually read the book. Not even a percent, maybe not even a per mil. So most of the society, even though they feared Alzheimer's, were in a zombie state and didn't want to have any information how to prevent it.
Mhm.
So they have the fear, but they don't respond. Now with COVID, I'm giving the same speeches again, the same talks. I talk about how you can protect your brain, and more people than ever listen to me. So COVID woke people up. So COVID had more impact on the society in a positive way than the fear of Alzheimer's, which was a similar strong threat to the mental integrity. So I actually feel that Corona, even though it was really bad and it helped maybe in a way to wake society up, to make it more aware of the threats and the question or the interest of so more people now than ever is that we have to transform our health systems. I mean, we have to transform everything. We have to change something. Because to be honest, before 2020, it was not good at all. I mean, we had depression rates that were higher than ever. Alzheimer's rates were increasing year by year. When I wrote my first book on Alzheimer's, maybe 15 years ago, Alzheimer's was number 10 or number 11 on the death ranking list in Europe and the United States. In 2020, it was on number 3. So it was increasing, and that means that the humanity, societies were not living according to the principles that safeguard the mental abilities. I mean, humans are designed to become 80, 90 years old without Alzheimer's. And now we have 50, 60, 70-year-old people with a large percentage having Alzheimer's. And that was a problem we had already before 2020. Of course, the measures have accelerated this process, but at the same time, more people woke up. And so I'm looking forward in the future that is actually better than the one we had 2020. It sounds strange, but I'm really hopeful. I was not a friend of Trump really, and but when I was over there in January 2020, and later on I was again in the United States in March 2020, 24, it was both 24, January 24 and March 24. Both times I spent a week or so in the United States, traveling around and telling people about the indoctrinated brain. This is the first time I was, and the second time I was in the War Room. That is by Steve Bannon. And Steve Bannon is one of the key figures in the Trump team. And he actually wanted me to meet Trump, to discuss with him the content of my book. Particularly, he was interested to discuss that with me when I was invited by Tucker Carlson to talk about the book. It was just a week after he talked to Putin. So I said, well, before I talk to Trump at the time, I said, I first want to talk with Kennedy. And actually, we wanted to make an appointment to talk about the content of my book. But then he got the election essentially to become the new health minister. And so I think he is too busy right now to talk to me. But for me, this is the best that could happen because, I mean, he is one of the few people on a high level, political level, who essentially told us that something has to change, that this is a war against humanity, against human brains, and he and I are essentially on the same page. So, but I'm also suspicious, of course. I want to know, is he only in the team because Trump needed the votes that he was collecting for his own presidency campaign? Or is he really in a mood to change things dramatically? I mean, it would be a complete change of the healthcare system in the United States with, of course, waves, which will make waves all around the globe. And so I'm very hopeful, but on the other side, we have to be very, very thoughtful about this because if it doesn't happen, then it will be devastating. Because then it's a very important hope that is gone. And so when I give lectures here in Germany, and I'm asked the same question, I usually say, well, I'm waiting for the 21st or 2020 or 21st of January. That's when the election happens, and maybe a week later, he will get his post as the health minister, Kennedy, and then I will check every week of if on the website of the CDC, the the um, the Center of Disease Control, if there's still the proposition that babies should be injected with the mRNA 3 times in the first year of their life. I mean, it's really there. It started last year that they recommend that babies in their first year of life should get 3 injections with the mRNA, which contains this dangerous spike protein. I mean, really damaging the brain of kids, of children, before they can start even thinking. And so I'm looking at this page now every week and see if it's disappearing. If it disappears, then I'm hopeful. If it doesn't disappear, I will certainly write a letter. I actually have his personal home phone number. I will call him up.